not want to necessarily come on and depress you and further take you down emotionally, but really to have a intellectual conversation about some of the facts and some of the context that's surrounding this religious violence that we've been experiencing since March 15th from the Christchurch mosque shooting down in Australia. So happy Sunday, everybody. We're just hanging out, waiting. We're at 3 minutes and 52 seconds. We're about to start on the 5-minute mark. Today's title is Why the Sudden Rise in Religious Violence. So thank you for joining me, guys. If I know you, what's happening? If I don't know you, welcome to the podcast. This podcast is really designed to engage people into thinking about perspectives or considering facts that they're not being exposed to in mainstream outlets. So everything is available at aaronlujan.com. This podcast is available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all the major podcast players. Starting to see listeners from different countries. So, hey, if you're from Saudi Arabia listening to my podcast, and this is not the House of Saud, please email me, lujan.aaron@gmail.com. I want to know who the heck is listening to me in Saudi Arabia. 5, 4, 3, 2, and welcome. Today is April 28th, 2019. You are listening to Counterculture with Aaron Lujan, also known in the southwestern United States as Lujan. And today's episode 35, Why the Sudden Rise in Religious Violence. Wow, it feels good to be back, guys. I have not podcasted since February, and I apologize. I actually had my biggest month in April so far in terms of downloads, which is crazy. I don't know how that happened. I'm talking about a 40% jump. And I didn't record anything, so I'm like, what the heck am I doing not recording podcasts in my biggest month? So here I am, guys. If you're listening to me, I don't know what's wrong with you. I'm a nobody, but I guess I'm a somebody because I'm like you. We're all just trying to figure out what the heck is going on in this crazy world, guys. And I'm just a brown kid from Albuquerque, New Mexico, trying to understand why we have so much craziness in this world. So, as I mentioned, today's podcast is titled Why the Sudden Rise in Religious Violence. March 15th, as we all know, there was a tragic terror attack in Christchurch, Australia, at a mosque. It was live streamed on Facebook. And, wow. I just realized I was not even... Sorry, guys. We're going to have to do a timeout on the podcast. So, I mentioned a little while ago that I was attempting to do something I've never done before, which is live stream on YouTube, Facebook Live, Periscope, Vaughn Live, YouNow, Instagram, and of course I'm having technical difficulties. But thank you for joining me, guys. You guys are listening to Ghetto Podcast, so just bear with me. I know I started this podcast and said 4 to minute 5, but I'm timing out right now because I'm trying to live stream on all these different platforms, and apparently I'm having technical difficulties, guys. So again, if you're watching the rebroadcast, I don't know, 4 to minute 8, 4 to minute 9, just forward till you find some cohesive sentences and some sanity. It looks like I'm unknown connection error, retrying in 3 seconds. I think I have poor internet connection. I don't know, man. This sucks. Anyways, I tried. Okay, well, I know I'm live on Instagram, so that's cool. Some people just do that. One more second, guys. I really wanted to do this. If you're watching this, you're crazy anyways. Like me. It's late night, going live. This is my hobby, it's fun. Thank you for hanging out with me, guys. Trying to go live on different platforms. And it just keeps saying retrying in 3 seconds, retrying in 3 seconds. I know I'm live on Instagram. So let's just go. This is being recorded as a podcast. March 15th, 2019, this year, guys, there was a tragic attack in Christchurch, Australia. Apparently, it was a quote-unquote white supremacist opened fire with his firearm on Muslims worshiping in a mosque. 50 killed, 50 injured. April 21st, Easter Sunday in Sri Lanka, a Christian church was attacked and responsibility was taken publicly by the Islamic State, also known as ISIS. Their public relations arm publicly stated that they took full responsibility of the 106 murdered, 500 injured in explosions on Easter Sunday just last week, a week from today. This is being recorded April 28th, 2019. Yesterday, April 27th, in my hometown, I suppose, of Rancho Bernardo, Poway, California, guys. I actually grew up in that area. My folks live right around the corner, as well as my brother and many close friends in the San Diego area. Shout out to the 6'1" Nina. That was dumb. Anyways, yesterday, April 27th, a synagogue was attacked in Poway, California. One dead. A woman was killed by a quote-unquote white supremacist. And I keep saying quote-unquote because that's actually part of why I'm getting on here today to talk about this quote-unquote stuff. 3 injured in Poway at the synagogue. And today, as just released a few hours ago, we have another attack at a Christian church in Baltimore, Maryland. 1 reported dead, 6 injured. And here we are, 1, 2, 3, 4 religious attacks, violent attacks, since March 15th, which was less than 6 weeks ago approximately. Which leads me to the question of today's podcast: why the sudden rise in religious violence? And allow me to begin by saying that I wanted to come on here to answer that question and preface it by saying that I'm going to answer this by illustrating motive. If you are a criminologist, if you are a detective, and you are investigating a crime, you have a responsibility to attribute motive to the crime, because if you can attribute motive to the crime, it's much easier to solve the problem. Allow me to simplify. If you are a store owner of a candy shop and a candy bar was stolen, the motive would obviously be they just wanted to have the candy bar without paying for it. You wouldn't have to do a lot of investigate. You would know that the person who stole the candy bar's motive was it would be theft. But it gets much more complicated in cases of violence and murder, right? And so anybody who's ever watched 24 Hours, is the only show and my favorite show that's actually a mainstream television show, I guess because it's based in reality, goes into these detectives really trying to determine motive. And it's important for them to do so because then they can solve the crime. And so, beginning with that preface, I would like to question motives, and I think that would answer the question, why the sudden rise in religious violence? And allow me to argue that if we know why people are attacking synagogues and attacking churches and attacking mosques, then we'll know why the sudden rise in this violence. It'll help us to understand the world that we live in. So I begin. March 15th, the media reported that there was a white supremacist who was motivated by hatred of Muslims to open fire on a church in Christland, Australia. The media positioned the attacker as a white supremacist, so the implication and that Anglo people of European descent had racial superiority and had a moral obligation in this warped worldview to subjugate and to eliminate anyone who was not of their race or origin. So we must then accept the fact that there is a movement in the world, in some corners of the earth, that there's a white supremacist movement amongst us. That there are people that are walking around us that adhere to this worldview and this ideology that Anglo-Caucasian people of European descent have inherent superiority over people like me that have brown skin, or people that worship a different faith from the predominant religion of the Caucasian people, which is Christianity. And people that are brown and that maybe live in parts of Southeast Asia or certain parts of Africa, but of course predominantly the Middle East, they adhere to Islam. So we must accept this idea that there's this movement. Well, I don't know about you guys, but do you have any white supremacist friends? Do you remember being around or near any white supremacist circles? When's the last time you got a flyer in your car? When's the last time you got a knock on the door that is known as white supremacy? I don't see it anywhere. The point I'm trying to make, guys, is that this is false flag. This is fake news. This is a part of history. We have, at least in the United States, and then of course in European 18th, 19th century slave trade, and a zeitgeist amongst the culture that Anglo people had some sort of racial superiority. You guys, this is 2019. You would watch television, you would think that 30% of the population is Anglo. I mean, they literally celebrate black culture, whatever that is. And I say that not to be derogatory towards black people, but I say that because we're constantly being shoved down our throat how minded about how racist we are all the time. And again, this is a brown guy, a Hispanic guy saying this on a podcast. I'm obviously and clearly not some white supremacist sitting up here saying, "Hail Hitler, death to brown people," because that would mean me and my wife and my kids would have to die, and that would suck. So I'm clearly not up here promoting any sort of white supremacy. In fact, I'm very embarrassed many times when I talk to Anglo people and how sometimes they picked up on the cultural cues and apologize for being white and, "Oh, well, I'm just a white guy." It's like, man, dude, I would never say I'm just a brown guy. I would never put myself down. I'm proud of the fact of where I come from and who I am and my heritage. In fact, I'm up here podcasting because I would like to consider myself, I am a patriot. I love my nation. I love my country. And let me just digress for a second. America doesn't have a race. It's a nation of immigrants. It's a nation of people like me who came here arguably 100 years before Georgetown was founded. My family originated from Santa Fe, New Mexico area, which actually preceded the American Revolution. So clearly, if you look at me, but I'm probably more American than anybody listening to this podcast. That just sounded really prideful. I apologize, guys. But you understand, I'm just trying to make a point. America doesn't have a race. And we have a false flag event happening, at least ideologically, when the media says that that Muslim people in Islamic mosques, I can never say that word, mosques, are being attacked because we have this movement in the globe where there's white supremacists. You know how close they got, you guys? You know Gavin McInnes and the Proud Boys? There was all that news, the alt-right, there's these white guys that, run around hating on minorities and believe in this white supremacist ideology. I think the founder, or at least the head guy of Proud Boys, has about the same color of skin as I do. Really, that the only thing that the media can point to is this, hold on one second, guys. Okay, we took a pause on the podcast. It's sad that the only thing that the mainstream media can point to is the supposed alt-right in the United States that is the Proud Boys, because they've repeatedly said we are not racist. So my whole point is that when the media comes out and says we have white supremacists attacking synagogues, we have white supremacists attacking mosques, you guys, that's victim on mind control drugs. Look it up. And they're probably somehow got a relative, like in the Sandy Hook shooting, the guy that was accused of shooting up the Sandy Hook school. His dad was in like Army intelligence or Navy evidence here on the table that you're not going to hear from Rachel Maddow or Anderson Cooper. I'm shocked that I'm still on social media. So get it while it's hot. Think about the fact that there is no white supremacist organizations in the United States or anywhere in the globe that has any sort of influence. There is no coordinated story. I don't understand why I got to turn on the news and hear about this quote-unquote white supremacist, but yet a couple Super Bowls ago, we got Beyonce running around with Black Panthers, calling for a black ethno-state ideology, because it's not because they're black, because it's rooted in hatred, and we should be opposed to hatred. We should be opposed to violence as civil and peaceful people. Moving along, April 21st, 2019 in Sri Lanka, a Christian church was blown up by the Islamic State. Now here comes the juicy contrast, guys. Here comes the juicy contrast. 106 were killed, 500 injured, and it was, and you guys, the responsibility was taken by ISIS. Guess what? They're calling for a caliphate. They're calling for an Islamic state. You know what that means? That means that Sharia law will be the law of the land, like the Constitution in our free republic of the United States is the law of the land. And Sharia has genital mutilation. Sharia says women are property. My woman is not my property. My woman is my wife, and she's equal under the Father. And we are all equal if we all bleed red. But Sharia wants to say that females are property because they're females. And that is wrong. And that is incompatible with our system here in the United States. No, it doesn't mean that I hate Muslims. No, in fact, I have Muslim clients. In fact, I have Muslim friends. In fact, I pray for my Muslim brothers and sisters. You know why? Because I think they're under a system of oppression, and I love the person. And I hate the ideology and the system that they are under. Hashtag get my point. That's why it's called counterculture, guys. Forgive me, I'm a little hyped up today. I'm like that caged dog that hasn't been out and seen the sun and hasn't gotten a good run in a while. Woo! Moving along. The Islamic State took full responsibility. It's a coordinated group. They have a worldview. They have global counterparts throughout the globe trying to overthrow countries. I got a little traction on Twitter this week for tweeting to one of the attorneys over at CARE, hashtag Ahmed for Change. He declared Tahir, or am I pronouncing that? Takir, which is like death to any enemies of jihad and Islam, to Laura Loomer, the famous Rambo journalist, one of my heroes. God bless Laura Loomer. Hashtag stop the bias. Basically saying that she should be murdered because she's exposing the fact that CARE, the Council of American of Islamic Relations, which is a front group for Hamas and Islamic groups in the Middle East, are running around with neckties here in the United States and in Washington, D.C., influencing public policy. CARE needs to be banned. CARE needs to go. Hell no, they need to go. I say all that to tell you guys there is a coordinated effort to overthrow the United States government by Muslims. Yes, I said it. Muslims. The people that think that Muhammad was a prophet when in fact he's dead and he was a pedophile. Muhammad was a pedophile. Yes, he was. It is a system of slavery. We should love the people and hate the system that they are subjugated beneath. Today, April 28th, Baltimore, Maryland, we don't know what happened at the church, but we do know that it was an attack on Christianity. So what's that about? Well, let's start off by saying that Christians are the most persecuted group in the world. If you look at the statistics, you go to the Human Rights Watch website, if you actually look to see who is actually the group in all of the countries throughout the world that's the most persecuted, ask China, ask India, ask, I don't know, the United States. You know how like we're getting shadow banned on Twitter, and how, you know, in the UK, pastors are getting arrested. And you know how like Christians are getting rounded up in Saudi Arabia and burned alive in cages. Yeah, it's Christianity that's being attacked. It's why there was 500 injured and 106 dead on April 21st in Sri Lanka. Because the real enemy of world governments and all of their religious groups like Islam are people who follow Jesus Christ. People who love the true God. So that's why it's important to underline and understand the context of why the sudden rise in religious violence. There's religious wars taking place. We had an attack that was initiated by Islam. They have waged jihad in Sri Lanka. I would venture to think, though, that in March 15th, when it launched, it was really launched by intelligence agencies only because there is no white supremacist group supporting some weirdo psycho. They wanted a live stream in Christchurch, Australia. If I had to venture to guess, that was an intelligence operation to disarm the West and to instigate jihad. Listen to the Hagman and Hagren report. These are former CIA analysts, far more intelligent, far more insightful than I'll ever be. These guys, I believe, have the nail pinned down. I don't know, the nail pinned down, is that even a thing? It's late, guys. It's freaking 11:50. I gotta get out of here in a second. I'm getting in trouble. Blessed be Muhammad, the holiest of prophets. Listen to the Hagman and Hagren report. They've really kind of squared in on what's going on and what's at foot. And I think intelligence agencies are provoking these jihadists. And then that in return either lets loose intelligence operation victims who are being on mind control drugs. I know it sounds crazy, but when you go down the rabbit hole, you realize the powerful people really have a lust for power, will do whatever it takes to seize power. They will do crazy things like find psychos and put them on mind control drugs and tell them to go shoot up churches. Hashtag Sandy Hook, hashtag I digress. The Poway synagogue shooting yesterday was probably either a wound up toy from an intelligence operation, or they're hoping and betting that there's real weirdos out there that are on SSRI drugs because on the label it says it has homicidal tendencies. They've been bullied their whole life, and they don't have God in their lives, and they've been spoon-fed propaganda. And one day they just snap after they hear about the Sri Lanka explosion, and they feel morally justified to defend Christianity and go and shoot up a synagogue and then write a manifesto that says the Jews are in control of the media. Which brings me to my next point. I think the other motive is that the system and the intelligence agencies are really scared of the fact that the truth is getting out. Someone's commenting, do you know Hitler supported Islam in World War II? I didn't know that, Michael. That's very interesting. Hitler supported Islam. Well, it would make sense, right? You would try to rally all of the crazies to your cause because they're the ones that will go out and take bullets. Good people, honorable people, they defend the innocent. They stand for righteousness. They do what is right and what is good and what is pure. They do not commit acts of violence upon innocent people. I think what we have is a series of crazy people responding to crazy people responding to a series of crazy events by crazy people. And I'm up here trying to make peace and trying to wake people up and say, hey guys, maybe the reason we have a sudden rise of violence is because, going back to my point before, my friend here, Michael, brought up a great point, is that we have the system scared of the fact that people are starting to talk about the root cause, which is we have a group of people in control of all the major institutions like the media, like Hollywood, like big tech, like the church, and when I mean the church, I mean the Catholic Church, the Vatican, like the banking system, like the financial system, and like all of it, any institution that has power is controlled by a small cabal of people that are adhering to one world ideology, and it's called Zionism. Word of the day, Zionism. And it's the reason why, if you read the manifesto of the Poway shooter at the synagogue, in his manifesto, he goes on and on and on about cultural Marxism. He discusses Zionism. He discusses the fact of, he uses the word Jewry. And so the media is spinning it, guys. Follow me here. The media is spinning it and saying that it's anti-Semitism. They are the queens of conflation. There's a difference between pointing out a hard fact, which is Zionism is a real ideology that is adhered to by real people that represent 0.0000001% of the population. Yes, it's real. And the difference between a hateful ideology known as Welcome. Today is April 28th, 2019. My name is Aaron Lujan. The title of this podcast is Counterculture, and the purpose of this podcast